Hey guys, welcome to the show. So I have a few pieces of information that I want to share with everyone. So the first piece of information comes from IMF. IMF, if you're unaware, is a think tank, and it's an independent think tank that's concerned with central banking, economic policy, and public investment. And when we look into this IMF PDF that just came out, they're talking about a symposium that comes up at May 10th, May 11th, we find none other than James Wallace, Vice President of Ripple, head of the CBDC division of Ripple, shoulder to shoulder with people at the IMF, with people at the Saudi Central Bank, as well as the head of payment strategy at SWIFT. Now, when I dig more into this document, I find none other than Susan Friedman, head of public policy, shoulder to shoulder with Hester Peirce. Hester Peirce, of course, is the commissioner at the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission. So they're suing Ripple, yet here they are talking at the same event on the same exact podium. They're talking at the same exact event at the same exact thing. It's speakers. They're not even on the same day. They're or different segments. It's the same exact segment. They're talking shoulder to shoulder. So I thought that was very interesting. All this stuff's coming out, yet there's Ripple at a think tank for central banks. So ThistaWorks, the People's Clearinghouse, MUCSS partner to provide efficient cross-border remittances services to rural communities in Mexico. Well, it turns out that this U.S.-Mexico corridor set up a remittance platform for rural migrant workers that uses the Interledger and Mojo Loop. Now, Mojo Loop and Interledger, they're technologies that are agnostic. You can use any payments channel that you want. However, the people that developed XRP also had input in ILP, and they have this designed to be optimized for the asset XRP. So this technology works really well with ILP. Now, we know this used to be a really popular area. As a matter of fact, MoneyGram partnership surrounded this whole U.S. to Mexico corridor. And you could see Interledger Foundation here. Mojo Loop is also on this site. ThistaWorks has a website, and it lists some of Ripple's partners. So Shinhan Microfinance was also in Ripple PDFs as RippleNet partners. So here is an article talking about Ripple signing up the most significant Korean bank, Shinhan. So this whole US to Mexico region is Mojo Loop ILP enabled. XRP is optimized for ILP. Doesn't mean that it's going to be using it today, but it possibly could in the future, and it's really set up to use this. So there's over 140 rural community banks tied in with this network. So it looks like a pretty decent sized network. Now, there also looks like it's cross-border remittances for Singapore, Philippines, Singapore, Myanmar. These jurisdictions are also very active ODL jurisdictions. So these are exotic currencies that work very well with ODL. So keep that in mind. ILP is not specific to XRP, but it is optimized. I've also heard other developers, designers talk about ILP and trying to use different assets, and XRP works the best with ILP. Now, I want to talk about Operation Sandman. This is an internet rumor. I usually don't address stuff like this, and I'm making it clear to you that this is a rumor. There's no facts behind it. It's just something that's popped up quite a bit on my feed. So Operation Sandman is this global attempt that all other countries dump their treasuries at the same time. So this is something I've been talking on my channel for a while, for a very long time, that eventually people get fed up with the dollar and they attack back, right? So sanctions are the U.S. attacking other countries. If other countries were to dump their dollar-denominated debt, that would cause havoc in the bond market. Now, what just happened was on Thursday or Friday, Jeffrey Snyder tweeted out, people really want to put their heads in the sand about this, but this is some real 2008 stuff right here. And you're seeing the U.S. 1-month Treasury start to decline drastically. Now, if we take a closer look at the US 1-month chart, you can see it here. The drop is pretty steep. So we saw this sell-off in 1-month bonds. Now, back here, this was a precipitous fall. This was a drastic fall. And you can see here, it looks like it's just starting. We don't know if this continues, but if it does continue, that is indicative that the central banks will be pivoting soon. And usually the central banks pivot into a market sell-off, not so much good time. So if you overlay this chart with, SPY, you could see back here when the market sold off, that's also when Treasuries sold off. So keep that in mind. Now, we do see signs like Warren Buffett is selling his stake in semiconductors. We're also seeing signs that Larry Fink has sold 7% of his BlackRock equity. If you don't know, BlackRock is one of the largest money managers in the world. They're very levered in real estate. So real estate does not work well with high interest rates. When you have high interest rates, real estate usually gets hurt from that. The prices of real estate become extremely high when you borrow money to take out a mortgage and there's a high interest. That means that the cost of your mortgage becomes more. Now, but with all this said, I went to breakfast with my wife and I heard the chef telling a customer he better sell all of his stocks before the markets drop. So, during C19, March 2020, they printed 60% of money or 40% of all the money in the world. Where did that money go? It's on the sidelines right now. And you're seeing all these people like Warren Davidson. Warren Davidson's a senator, right? And you're saying that the fact is that we have not arrived at a crash doesn't mean we aren't headed there. So everybody's predicting this massive crash, right? In my experience, when everybody is saying the same thing, usually the opposite happens. Now, this is the dollar. It's right on support. You saw what I showed you with the 1-month bond. Here's the 1-year bond. Tells a very different story, right? The 1-year bond looks like it's still stable. So there's a chance that, this is just a blip and it goes back to normal for the 1 month, because the 1 year, and if you go out through the whole range, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, they're all kind of telling you the same thing as the 1 year. So it very well could be a blip. So Fubar tweets out that France launched a stablecoin on Ethereum. That's the worst code he's ever seen. Every ERC20 single transaction has to be approved in a separate transaction submitted by the central registrar. So I've talked about public and private innovation, right? And the Fed, the central banks, are going to do a lousy job at technology. Ultimately, they're going to just have to partner with the private sector, and that's what Ripple's doing with OMFIF, right? They're right on stage with these central bankers. Is the product they provide is to do all the tech work for them. And it looks like the Central Bank of France is setting up their CBDC on Ethereum and making it so they have to validate every single transaction. It's just not going to work. Now, Solomon, I believe, dug up a couple of PDFs with the Banque de France, and it looked like they were working with both Ethereum and Ripple. I would say the XRP ledger is much more suited for how they want to go about designing this, right? The UNLs have to validate each transaction, has to say yes or no, and you could pick one specific UNL, and simultaneously every once in a while some of the other UNLs double check to make sure that they're honest. But this design really would be better suited on the XRP ledger. So Spiriters tweets out the stock market master Warren Buffett is selling almost all of his stake in Taiwan Semiconductor. So, we saw President Biden try to push for chips to be created in Austin, Texas. Europe makes the fab equipment, the U.S. makes the intellectual property, and Taiwan is the one that is able to run the fab equipment and produce the semiconductors. And now Warren Buffett is selling his stake in Taiwan Semiconductors because the U.S. is positioning to try to bring semiconductor production onshore. Now, this is how nations grow, is with semiconductors. It's the lifeblood. We saw Warren Davidson is in front of Congress, and he's grilling Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler recently got called in front of Congress, and listen to this clip.
You say in your statements that there's clarity in the market and the rules are clear. Just come on in. You can't even answer the question. Do you say XRP is a security?
We're in court and active discussions and litigation on that.
You're in litigation because you do say it's a
So Gary Gensler is being grilled in front of different congressional members. Listen to this.
Look, I think that the general sweep of what Congress did, not just in the 30s, but as amended.
I'm asking you, sitting in your chair now, to make an assessment under the laws as exist. Is ether a commodity or a security?
Without speaking to anyone.
I know you've repeatedly said you're not going to speak to one, except you've spoken to one, Bitcoin. So I'm asking you to speak to a second one, the second largest market cap here.
And speaking to the tokens, there's 10 to 12,000. If there's a group.
So it's really painful like this. Every congressional member really starts grilling him, with the exception of a couple of them. Most of them seem to be pro-crypto. Now, what's interesting is he wrote a tweet saying serving at the SEC for 2 years has been an honor, kind of in a past tense. So prior to this congressional committee, that's what he was saying. It's been an honor. Maybe he knows, his days are numbered there, and he's gonna resign. So it's very interesting to see all this play out. Now, there's footage of Gensler praising Algorand, yet Bittrex just received a lawsuit where they said Algo was an unregistered security. Now, this is the interview that I did with Andrew Busmani, so be sure to follow the XX network, so XX_network, and you'll see this interview, so be sure to check it out. In the beginning it was a little bit rough, but after like 45 minutes or so, it really gets pretty interesting, so be sure to check that out. Brian Armstrong said anything is on the table, including relocation. And it looks like Coinbase has secured a Bermuda license, and the EU approves a framework for crypto. So it looks like Coinbase, one of a publicly traded company, one that's worth billions of dollars, it's revenue for the government, is trying to relocate to Bermuda to offer derivative products. So pretty interesting stuff. Now, the last piece of information, this is Jay Clayton. Listen to Jay Clayton has to say about Bitcoin.
Directional view. I don't own it. But I don't believe we should ban it. Right. I feel like that's not the kind of choice that the government should be making for, other people.
And here's the example of why.
So this was a pretty interesting talk, and kind of gives you insight into how the SEC is thinking. Numerous times he's brought up the analogy that if you were to make an opera or something, or an event, and you sell the tickets prior to actually having the opera happen, those are securities, and he gives all of the reasoning why. Before the event even exists, you sell tickets. That would be a securities offering. And I think they specifically talk about Ethereum, and Ethereum looking more like a ticket to a movie that already exists versus a ticket to a movie that doesn't exist right now. So pretty interesting to hear the legal people try to define all this stuff. In my opinion, this is a completely separate category, and there should be different rules to it, but my opinion doesn't matter. I hope you guys all enjoyed this show. I'm going to be at the zoo with my family. I'm going to take the weekend off, but it was an honor to create this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell. Thanks, everyone.